In her dream, Elsie kept walking aimlessly until she reached a point where she stopped due to a bright light. The light caused her a headache, and made her fell to the ground. In the blurry state caused by the light, in front of her appeared Asef standing in an unmanageable state. Elsie was surprised to see Asef's condition. "Why would you be wearing something like that on a cold day like this?" she said that as she approached Asef. Elsie tried to touch Asef, but in the blink of an eye Asef's body disappeared into ashes. Elsie screamed, unable to control her emotions. She knew it was a dream, but she felt there was something strange about her dream. "Hey, you! Stop right there!" Someone screamed in front of Elsie. Elsie looked in front of her and saw Asef, who was running chased by a merchant. Elsie tried to catch Asef but failed to do so because Asef's body passed through her body. Asef kept running towards his house, while Elsie tried to chase Asef from behind. Elsie continued to chase Asef. She felt something strange. In the novel she read, there was never a snowstorm when the incident happened. Upon arrival, Asef wanted to enter the house but was greeted by a group of masked villains holding daggers. "Who are you?" Elsie shouted after seeing the man. "I see you're her son." "Right, good thing you're here," said one of the masked men. It seems that their purpose in coming there is to kill him. Seeing his mother and father lying covered in blood, Asef screamed to be released. Because he was not happy with Asef's screams, "We'd better silence him," said the man while raising his hand and stabbing Asef. Elsie shouted for Asef while running towards him. "Let's go before the storm worsens," said one of the men, then dropped the lamp he was holding, causing Asef's house to burn. "Is this all right? That kid seemed to still be alive," asked the man. "Do you think he can survive this fire?" answered his friend, and then they both left from there. Elsie hugged Asef while crying. She couldn't take it anymore. Elsie wanted to wake up from her dream. Elsie now realizes how painful the life that Asef lived until he became a villain. Elsie heard the sound of someone's footsteps approaching her. She turned and saw her younger self. She approached and said, "Won't you change it? The fate of this child," said her younger self. Elsie was surprised as she looked at herself, wondering how she could see and talk to her. Until now, no one has ever been able to see and talk to her inside her dreams. No matter how many times it's replayed, it will always be a tragic death. That is this kid's fate, but are you going to let him die like this? Her younger self said it. Asef's face crossed Elsie's mind for a moment. She had already promised to save Asef. Elsie looked at Asef's soul in front of her. The soul sparkled and went towards the fire that was burning hot. Elsie stands up to get the soul. This time she is determined to save Asef. "Hold on, I'll come and save you," Elsie said as he headed towards the fire that was burning. "Help me, somebody please help me," shouted Asef. In front of him appeared a demon formed from fire trying to devour him. Elsie screamed at the demon to release Asef. In the middle of the burning fire, Elsie tried to get Asef's soul back. Back to the previous story, that time when Elsie was sick. It had been 4 days since Elsie began suffering from inexplicable fever. She barely managed to wake up. When Elsie wakes up, Duke Tiada asks if she's okay. Elsie breathlessly tells Duke Tiada to save Asef. Soon a knight came. The knight came to meet Duke Tiada to report what he found. Having finished listening to the report, Duke Tiada ordered the knight to resume his duties. While Elsie, who is sick, continues to plead with him to go save Asef. Although Duke Tiada didn't know what was happening, but because he couldn't bear to see the desperate Elsie, he finally went to do it. Duke Tiada went with his knights to Asef's house. When they got there, what they found was a couple lying in a pool of blood. After his knights checked the house, they managed to capture 2 criminals who tried to escape. While they were busy with the criminals, Asef's mother held Duke Tiada's leg trying to get up. She woke up and told Duke Tiada to burn the house. "What do you mean?" Duke Tiada said, not understanding the request. "She says that Asef is out to get medicine for her. She doesn't want them to know that Asef is still alive. That is the only way to save Asef." Asef's mother begged to save Asef. After saying that, she took her final breath. After complying with her last request, Duke Tiada began to act to find out the real mastermind of the incident. With the help of his knights, it doesn't take him long to find out that the mastermind is actually the emperor. Hearing the explanation from Duke Tiada, Asef tried to hold back his anger. "I see, and that must be why you started working with him too," said Prince Alceste. Duke Tiada explained that he had to because his daughter was poisoned by them while he was not with them. "So what happened to that child?" Asef asked that question. Duke Tiada recalled the incident. After they set the house on fire, Asef, who was outside, has already returned home. However, after seeing his house on fire, he ran away from there. Seeing Asef running, his two knights try to chase after Asef, but Duke Tiada stops them. He tells his knight to stop and tells them, "That's enough, you don't need to follow him." He says that leaving the place is the main thing to do. Asef looked at Duke Tiada and said, "Don't you think that child would have resented you after running away? He must have thought you were an enemy who killed his family," he said. Duke Tiada shook his head, then answered. "Well, perhaps, however, I believe he was lucky to get away," he answered. He added again, "When the emperor found out I lost the boy, he took my children hostage. Because of that, Duke Tiada thought to blame the boy. If Zay had died because of that, I would have also turned all my rage towards that child. However, that terrible thing didn't happen. I'm sure he's living well somewhere, right?" he added. Listening to Duke Tiada's explanation, Asef finally found out the real thing. Now he knows the cause of his family's death. "I heard you changed your coat of arms because of that too. Do you regret it?" asked Prince Alceste. Then Duke Tiada replied, "Even if I could go in time, I would do things the same way." Duke Tiada replied. "Saving that child was the first thing my 3-year daughter ever asked of me," he added again. Hearing Duke Tiada's explanation, Asef couldn't control his emotions. Asef stood up and asked permission to leave the room, and tells them that there was something he had to do. "It's all right, you should go if you're busy," replied Prince Alceste. After Asef left, Prince Alceste and Duke Tiada continued their conversation. Prince Alceste said that he did not expect the emperor to do such a thing. He knew that the emperor was selfish, cruel, and cowardly. But he didn't think he would do that far. If he's still threatening you in order to ensure your loyalty, it means your influence is strong. So that's why Ludwig is trying to come up with a similar scheme, isn't it? He added. They know that Prince Ludwig has recently obtained the root of Anisha and the virtue of Akel. He ultimately wants to use that to make Elsie his. Duke Tiada furrowed his brow. He was perplexed at the thought the same thing would happen. By knowing how Duke Tiada thought of the emperor, it made Prince Alceste happy. Because Prince Alceste will marry Alyssa, then he has become part of the family together with Duke Tiada. With that, he promised Duke Tiada to protect his family. Meanwhile, Asef, who is outside, thinks that all this time he has been living filled with feelings of revenge. However, he didn't think that all this time there was someone who really wanted to save him. "I've never been happier to be alive in my whole life." Asef is very grateful to be reunited with Elsie again. While Asef was thinking, he was surprised by Alyssa's sudden arrival. Back to Elsie dream again. At that time, Elsie tried her best to get Asef's soul back. However, that was only for a moment. Elsie opened his palm and looked at Asef's soul. Suddenly a black light approached Elsie, then the light took Asef's soul away. Elsie tried to get Asef's soul but to no avail. While Elsie was in grief, a not-so-unfamiliar voice called her. Elsie looked towards her front and saw someone. That person was Goddess Premesa. Seeing Elsie, who was sad, Goddess Premesa approached Elsie and said, "You saddened and pained again," she said to Elsie. Elsie replied that he tried to save Asef but failed. Goddess Premesa says that Elsie actually managed to save Asef. What she saw was just a piece of memory. "You have sacrificed yourself numerous times in order to change his destiny. Just as you have saved him from that vicious cycle, I too have saved the child I love." Goddess Premesa even explained to Elsie what really happened. Hearing Goddess Premesa explanation, Elsie became confused due to her jumbled memory. "Your memory is unstable because you have the gift of resonance. It is a double-edged sword," said Goddess Premesa. She told Elsie that she had that gift when she was young. Thankfully, you were born as a twin, so part of that explosive power has been shared with your sibling, she added. You mean Lissa? Elsie asked Goddess Premesa. Yes, because of her you adapted to your power and survived. Even though your power is incomplete, you were still able to resonate with many people, said Goddess Premesa. Due to the power possessed by Elsie, she can predict someone's destiny. Asef was destined to die at the age of 5. Furthermore, he lost his soul to the devil and could not be reborn forever. Asef is destined to disappear without feeling love, resentment, or hate. You went against that and saved him, but interfering with another destiny has a cost. In your reincarnation, you have always sacrificed your own life to pay the price, Goddess Premesa told Elsie. However, the devil that was after his soul would not give up either. Asef, who was alive because of Elsie's sacrifice, sold his soul to the devil because of his attraction to Alyssa, who resembled Elsie. And because of that, the vicious cycle repeated. I no longer wanted you to interfere in his destiny, so I prayed for your soul to be reborn in a different world, far from this one, said Goddess Premesa. But again, you choose the same fate for his sake, she added. Goddess Premesa doesn't know what to do anymore. If Elsie continues to change Asef's destiny in that world, then her memory as Hanze will disappear forever. For now, you can still go back to your life as Hanze, not Elsie. I'll help you to live a life of comfort, so your soul is no longer in pain, she said that to Elsie. I don't want that. He needs me, answered Elsie after hearing the words of the Goddess Premesa. A life without him would be an even greater torment. So don't tell me to go back, I just want to stay beside him like this. Let me live with him please, pleaded Elsie to the Goddess Premesa. Goddess Premesa smiled hearing Elsie answer. She already guessed Elsie's answer, but he just wanted to test it. Kind and pure soul. How can I not love you when you're this beautiful, she said. Let us return, he is waiting for, said Goddess Premesa. After that, Elsie woke up from her sleep. Beside her, she saw Asef calling out to her in such a worried manner. Seeing Asef, Elsie tried to get up, but was startled by her body feeling painful. You shouldn't move, you've been unconscious for 3 days, Asef said. Elsie held his sore head, she didn't think she would be unconscious for so long. Zay, I'm so relieved that you woke up, if you don't wake up, would really destroy the world, Asef said that while holding back his emotions. That won't happen, I promised, remember. Whatever happens, I will never leave you, Elsie said that while caressing Asef's face. I was so afraid of losing you, I kept feeling like my heart was going to stop, Asef said then hugged Elsie. I'm sorry I made you worry, answered Elsie to Asef. You don't have to apologize. But why did this happen? All those stupid doctors were saying they have no idea, said Asef. Meanwhile, Alyssa and Prince Alceste just looked at the two of them. He left out the fact that he threatened to kill them if they didn't save her immediately, said Prince Alceste. I think we should give them some space now, Alyssa said. They looked at each other in agreement, then they left from there. What's the matter, why do you need to see me at this hour, said Alyssa after seeing Prince Alceste come to her room late at night. Prince Alceste looked at her then said, if it's all right with you, may I touch you for a moment, she said. Are you insane? Alyssa answered surprised. I mean we're not even married yet and you don't even officially propose. She added as she turned away. Prince Alceste knelt down and held Alyssa's leg ignoring Alyssa's shyness. You were treated by a doctor, so let it go, but I guess it's not healed yet, he said. It's because I don't pay attention, and you were distancing yourself from me, so I couldn't look at it carefully, he added. Alyssa looked at Prince Alceste with a pounding heart. After Prince Alceste finished treating her, Alyssa thanked him. But what you said earlier is right. So, since I'm already kneeling, I'd like to marry you, said Prince Alceste. I'll make sure you never get hurt, no matter what happens. Will you marry me? Prince Alceste ended his words with a proposal. After hearing the proposal, Alyssa laughed out loud. She found it funny with the behavior of Prince Alceste who proposed to her while holding her leg. Prince Alceste let go of his hand, he blushed embarrassed after realizing his behavior. Isn't it obvious, you're my fated partner? Of course I'll marry you, and thanks for saying that, Elsie said that while holding Prince Alcest's face. Meanwhile in Elsie's room. Elsie woke up from her sleep and saw Asef sleeping beside her. He was just an innocent child who just wanted a warm cotton blanket, Elsie thought. Elsie got off from the bed and approached Asef. If this pain is to heal you, I gladly endure it, she said while stroking Asef's hair. I don't mind as long as you're not hurt. I love you, she said, then kissed Asef's forehead. The next day, Elsie woke up from her sleep. That's weird, I fell asleep on the floor, Elsie thought. Not long after, Asef appeared with breakfast. Zay, did you get a good night's sleep? Said Asef. Amazing, you were asleep for 3 days, and then you slept for another half of the day, Asef said as he approached her. How do you feel, are you alright? Asef asked Elsie. I'm fine, actually, I feel completely refreshed. It's strange, but I feel like I'm totally back to normal now, Elsie said while waving his hand. Still, you haven't eaten anything for 3 days, so your stomach will probably be sensitive. First, eat something light and take some medicine. Asef scooped the porridge trying to feed Elsie. Asef smiled looking at Elsie who was chewing the food. Why are you looking at me like that? Elsie said shyly. Asef smiled and answered. Because I like you, I'm just happy that you woke up. Asef put the food then kissed Elsie. Asef wanted to continue kissing Elsie but Elsie tried to hold him back. What is it, you don't want to, he said. It's not that I don't want to, it's just that I haven't washed up yet, answered Elsie. If I slept for 3 days, I must smell bad. Thinking about that made Elsie embarrassed. Don't worry, I washed you during that time, Asef answered. You did what? Elsie shouted. He flinched at Asef's words. You're not lying to me, right? Elsie asked to be sure. Elsie looked at her clothes. Now she realized that what she was wearing looked clean. Realizing that, Elsie became nervous and embarrassed. Seeing Elsie's reaction, Asef hugged her while laughing out loud. I'm just kidding, I wouldn't do such a thing without getting permission, he said. You always smell like the spring, so let me go back to what I was doing, it's been so hard to bear. After saying that, Asef hugged Elsie then kissed her. While doing so, Asef began to think about his life path all this time. All this time, he only thought about taking revenge on the person who killed his family. And he thought that his purpose was right. However, after meeting Elsie, Asef began to think that there was something more meaningful that he should do. Finally, after a long time with his revenge, Asef found the purpose of his life. Now he promises to protect Elsie from any harm. That night, Elsie thought while looking out the window. She remembered the previous incident, she still couldn't forget Hilda's creepy face. Remembering Hilda's face made Elsie feel uneasy. Not long after, someone knocked on the door and appeared Asef approaching Elsie. Asef asked Elsie if he wanted to go on a picnic with him the next day. Asef wants to take Elsie to a place, even if it is not the same as in the capital, but that place has its own special features. It'd be good to go out and not stay home so much, said Asef. Elsie was silent for a moment, she didn't know what to do, she was worried if Hilda was still outside. Seeing Elsie who was having a hard time making a decision. Asef's face became gloomy. But after Elsie agreed to follow him, Asef's face became cheerful again. Then I'll go tell the maids to pack some lunch for us, Asef said. But Elsie stopped Asef from doing so because she wanted to do it herself. Although she is not very good at cooking, Elsie wanted to do it because it was their first picnic. Oh, why don't we go together? Picnics are better with a lot of people. Elsie wants to take Elsie and Prince Alceste to a picnic with them. Hearing Elsie's suggestion, Asef's face became gloomy again. Asef shook his head in disapproval, he wanted the picnic for the two of them only. The next day, Elsie was getting ready to prepare the food she wanted to bring to the picnic. Elsie was at a loss as to how to do it because she had only ever cooked instant noodles before. Elsie took a deep breath, she looked at the materials in front of her. Meanwhile, Asef, who has been in his office since yesterday, still hasn't slept due to the many papers he has to complete. Asef looked at the clock and saw that it was already morning. He also hurried to complete his work so that he could spend time with Elsie. Almor knocked on the door, then went in to meet Asef. In front of him, he saw Asef, who was busy completing his work. Aware of Almor's presence, Asef looked at him sharply and asked what he wanted. The spy working at Tia the Manor copied down some strange writing she found and sent it over. It was apparently written by Lady Elsie herself, Almor said while handing a letter to Asef. Asef opened the letter and saw writing that he had never seen before. Almor wanted to know Asef's opinion because the writing resembled the writing found on the body of the criminal they locked up. Asef stared at Almor. He warned him not to say it. Almor got scared and explained that he was just worried. Asef looks at the letter. It does look similar. Even I haven't seen this language, and I'm the head of foreign affairs. No, it's almost like a code, he thought. Asef showed Almor that it was different. He explained that what they saw before was a pattern, while what was written in the letter was like a word. Why would she write something like this? Almor said. Even Asef was not sure what Elsie had written, but he did not want to think about it and kept the letter back. Asef then tells Almor to find out if there is another letter like that written by Elsie. He wanted to see everything. And if you want to live, you should be careful to keep your mouth shut about this, Asef warned Almor. Almor nodded his head in understanding. He quickly wanted to leave because he didn't want Asef to scold him. But before he could leave, Asef stopped him. Just to be safe, go have a look at how the warlock is doing in the basement, he said. Not long after that, Asef heard someone knocking on the door. Asef, are you ready yet? Elsie said as she entered Asef's office. She was already ready to go on a picnic. The time for the picnic has finally arrived. After finishing preparing their picnic spot, Asef called Elsie. Elsie approached Asef while thanking him for preparing their place. Elsie looked around the area. She didn't think there was a beautiful area hidden there. I feel refreshed just from coming out here. I think it was a good idea to go out on this picnic, Elsie said. Asef is happy to see Elsie happy. He just smiles even though he hasn't had enough rest, but he is happy to be with Elsie. You look very busy earlier. Is it okay for you to take off? You seem exhausted, Elsie asked Asef. What are you talking about? Don't you know you're the one who needs rest psychologically and psychologically? Answered Asef. Anyway, I'm hungry, said Asef while reaching for the basket full of food. Yes, but it's a bit ugly. I'm not good with knives. Still, I did my best to make them, so don't tease me, Elsie said worriedly. Asef took the food out of the basket. It looked so soggy. But Asef didn't pay attention to it. In fact, he looked so happy to be able to eat the food made by Elsie. Seeing Asef's reaction, Elsie became embarrassed because she knew Asef praised her so that she wouldn't be offended. Because Asef was only looking at it earlier, Elsie gave Asef a piece of sandwich to eat. Asef reached for the food and began to eat it. Suddenly a loud crack was heard. Did you hear a weird thing just now? Elsie asked. I don't know, did you hear something? Answered Asef casually. Wow, what an amazing texture. The eggs are tender and vegetables are crunchy. It's delicious, Asef said while chewing the food. However, Asef is actually suffering from toothache because the food is mixed with ice. He doesn't want Elsie to know. I like the eggs, so I'll have all of them. You can have the other, he said to Elsie. Elsie looked at Asef happily. She didn't think Asef would like the food he made. I hope you can make this often, it's so delicious. It's been a while since someone made a meal full of affection for me, so I'm really happy right now, said Asef. Elsie was very happy to hear that. If you want, I can make it for you every day, answered Elsie happily. Elsie said she wanted to learn how to bake. She wants to make different breeds and cookies for their picnic in the future. Being like this, it feels like we're newlyweds, said Asef. Asef hopes to have the same child as Elsie one day. Hearing that she became a mother, Elsie blushed. By the way, I had a dream about you last night, Elsie said to Asef. He said that Asef in his dream was a little boy around 5 years old. In her dream, Asef waited for Elsie's arrival and gave Elsie flowers. "You're so cute that I want to take you home with me," Elsie said while putting the flower in Asef's ear and then hugging him. "What should I do? You really are cute." "Asef, I don't know you were this cute," Elsie said that while hugging Asef happily. "You did what?" Asef stood up after saying that. Asef looked at Elsie while frowning. He didn't believe Elsie would hug someone other than him. Elsie looks at Asef in disbelief. "It's not someone else, it's yourself." Elsie says that to Asef. "That's not me," denied Asef. "If it's me, why don't I remember?" said Asef. Elsie looked at Asef in disbelief. Elsie didn't expect Asef to think so immaturely. "And also adorable? And you want to live with him forever?" Asef was so unhappy thinking about it. Elsie said that it was just a dream. He didn't want Asef to bring it up. But Asef doesn't care about Elsie, he even wants to punish Elsie. "Punished? When all I've done is have a dream?" Elsie pressed his forehead while letting out a small sigh. "Why are you sighing? Did you want to live with him when I wasn't there?" "Say, Asef. It wasn't someone else, it was you. He looked exactly like you." Elsie can't stand Asef's behavior anymore. While Asef is still with his childishness. "How are we the same? I'm an adult and he a child," he said. Elsie wanted to say something but held it back. Elsie just looked at the childish Asef. "That brat, how did he seduce you with my face?" said Asef with an angry tone. Elsie raised her hand as a sign of surrender. She didn't want to continue arguing with Asef. She waited for Asef to punish her. Asef took a strawberry then fed Elsie. "What are you doing?" Elsie was surprised by Asef's actions. "Not eating, that is your punishment," replied Asef. Asef told Elsie to hold the fruit, then approached Elsie to eat the fruit from Elsie's mouth. But because Elsie was so embarrassed by the situation, the fruit slipped out of her mouth. "You spit it out," Asef looked at Elsie while grinning. "I don't mean to," answered Elsie while blushing. "You swallowed the rest, so you ate some and spit it out. You couldn't wait, could you?" Asef tries to tease Elsie. "We can't do this during the day." Elsie tries to stop Asef from approaching. She is worried if someone will see them. "Don't worry, no one will come here." Asef said that as he approached Elsie for a kiss. But before he could do it, he was startled by someone's voice calling Elsie. Asef and Elsie were surprised to see Alyssa with Prince Alceste approaching them. Seeing the two of them coming, Asef was not very happy about that. "Lissa, don't run, you should be careful, your ankle is not fully healed yet," said Prince Alceste. Alyssa replied that she was fine. "What were you two doing? I heard you even made sandwiches. Where are they? Give me one, I'm hungry," Alyssa said as she approached Asef. Seeing Alyssa, Asef was very angry. He didn't know how they knew where he was with Elsie. Elsie looked at Asef, worried that Asef would get angry. "It'd be nice to share them with your sister," Asef tells Elsie to do what is necessary. Seeing the shabby sandwich, Alyssa laughed out loud. "You even got strawberries," Alyssa said that was Elsie's favorite. "Here, Zay, have one too," Alyssa said as she approached Elsie to feed her. Asef looked at Alyssa very angrily. He was not happy with their presence. He wanted to be with Elsie alone. Seeing Asef who was angry, Prince Alceste apologized to Asef. He told Asef that he tried to stop Alyssa from coming, but his efforts were in vain. "You should have stopped her with your life," said Asef angrily. "What are you even doing at this house?" he added. To Asef's knowledge, by now Prince Alceste should already be in the capital. "Of course, but I think you should go with us too," Prince Alceste replied to Asef. Asef stared at Prince Alceste after hearing his words. Prince Alceste approached Asef and whispered that his manor is no longer safe. He suggests Asef to add more guards because he heard that Prince Ludwig is gathering sorcerers. "Darn it," Asef said while taking a deep breath. He didn't think that Prince Ludwig had already started doing it. Prince Alceste looked at Asef. He understood what Asef was worried about. Elisa pulled Elsie's hand and wanted to take her for a walk. Elisa wanted to take Elsie to see the flowers blooming beautifully. Elsie looked at Asef, trying to getting permission from him. Asef looked at Elsie while smiling, then allowed her to go with Elisa on the condition that they wouldn't go too far. Elsie nodded in understanding, then left with Elisa. "Have they all gone mad?" said Asef. He didn't think that the royal family would do such a thing. Prince Alceste thought that Prince Ludwig's action was not an order from the emperor. If it was an order from the emperor, then they would have a hard time knowing it. Asef believed that Prince Ludwig must be in a hurry to get the throne. Prince Ludwig is definitely worried about the return of Prince Alceste. What's more, Duke Theodore also has a lot of support. And Asef is also a supporter of Prince Alceste. An animal forced into a corner will struggle. Prince Alceste said that because he knew that Duke Theodore was not a supporter of Prince Ludwig. He knew that Prince Ludwig would definitely do something, but he was not sure what he would do. Asef began to worry. He was worried if Elsie and Elisa will be the target. Prince Alceste looked at Asef. Before the emperor had threatened Duke Theodore by using the root of Anisha. He will definitely do it again, but he still doesn't know his relationship with Elisa. In the emperor's view, Prince Alceste is his biggest threat. If he found out about their relationship, Elisa would definitely be in a dangerous situation. "Honestly, I want to reveal the seal and use Lady Elisa as bait," Asef thought to do that. Prince Alceste shouted, calling Asef after hearing his words. Asef said if it was his old self, he would have done it already. "Look," he pointed his finger at Elsie and Elisa. He didn't want Elsie to lose his family and loved ones. Asef had promised to protect Elsie and his family. Prince Alceste looked at Asef and then handed him a handkerchief. "What this?" Asef asked, confused by Prince Alceste's actions. Prince Alceste thought that if Asef wanted to cry, then he would need the handkerchief. Asef looked at Prince Alceste in confusion. The serious atmosphere became awkward for a moment. "Why are you even carrying that?" said Asef. "Lisa is still young, so she misplaces things easily," replied Prince Alceste. "She's only younger than Zay by a few minutes. And yet she is indeed the more immature one." "My Zay is very different," said Asef. They looked at Elsie and Elisa from afar, who were having fun. "It's only sometimes, she usually is more careful," replied Prince Alceste to Asef. After playing for so long, they both returned to their respective partners. Elisa brought flowers and then showed them to Prince Alceste. Elisa thought that she should bring more beautiful flowers. Asef stared at Prince Alceste as a sign that he wanted to be with Elsie alone. Prince Alceste, who understood the signal, took Elisa away from there. However, Elisa, who did not understand Prince Alceste's actions, refused to leave. However, after Prince Alceste said that he wanted to be alone with her, Elisa quickly agreed to follow him. Elisa asked permission from Elsie to leave, then took Prince Alceste away with a happy face. Elsie and Asef watched them walk away from there. "They'll be all right, won't they?" Elsie said, worried about Elisa's easygoing character. Asef replied that they are fine. If anything happens, Prince Alceste will definitely deal with it. Asef was so happy. Now he and Elsie were alone. He didn't think Prince Alceste would understand his signal. Asef then lied down and invited Elsie to enjoy the beautiful weather. At first Elsie was so shy, but she didn't want to miss the opportunity. Elsie breathed a sigh of relief. She was happy to have had the picnic together with Asef. At that moment Elsie felt safe and at peace. She could think clearly. Asef looked at the sky. He wondered how long that peace would last. Asef looked at Elsie without saying anything. Elsie asks if Asef wants to say something. Asef then asks what Elsie dreams every night. He wants to know what Elsie is going through. Meanwhile, Almor goes down to the basement to check on the prisoner. After arriving, Almor is surprised by what he saw in front of him.